Mm.
Hello, and welcome to ConTinual, the convention that never ends. My name is Jean Marie Ward, and I will be your host tonight for Hot Off the Press, the show where ConTinual introduces you to a bunch of new and wonderful books now available for purchase at your favorite retailers. With me tonight, we've got 6 wonderful authors, and right up, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves, starting with Caren Crane. Caren?
I'm Caren Crane. I write contemporary romance novels, and I have a new novella out in our Kingdom Castle anthology.
Great. David?
Hi, I'm David B. Coe. I also write as D.B. Jackson. I've been writing fantasy in long form and short form for a quarter century. When I signed up to do this panel, I was supposed to have a new book out this month, but circumstances beyond my control affecting the personal life of my editor and publisher have delayed that. So I will have a new book out in May, but right now I don't have one out yet.
Well, you can still talk about it and get everybody excited for it, right?
Yes, that's the plan.
Okay. Nancy?
I'm Nancy Northcott. I write historical fantasy for Falstaff Books. I also independently publish several subgenres of romance, including the Kingdom Castle Holiday Romance series. And I'm here to talk about the latest release in one of those series. The romance, not the Kingdom Castle.
Okay, great. Great. Deb, what about you? Let's tell the world a little bit about yourself.
Hey, I'm Deb Marlowe. I write Regency historicals, and I have just a brand new Victorian mystery series out just a few days ago called A Killer in the Crystal Palace, set during the Great Exhibition of 1851.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Blake?
I'm Blake Allwood. I write mostly contemporary romance under Blake Allwood. I also write some paranormal. I also have Adam J. Ridley, my other pen name, and that's my fantasy and sci-fi and most of my paranormal.
Okay.
I do have a new book out this month, my Coming Home series, which is a sweet, no explicit scenes, all emotion novel.
Okay, great. And Tawdra, what about you?
Hi, I'm Tawdra Kandle, and I write romance in just about every form: contemporary, paranormal, young adult, new adult, erotic. What other forms are there? If it's there, I've probably written it. Not historical, so I'm super excited to see what everybody else is presenting there. My new release today just came out today, and it is a military romance, and it's called The First Classman. And it's in my career soldier world. So,
could you tell folks a little bit about the plot of the book and what it's about, who it's about?
Me? Okay. Yes. I wasn't sure if you were going to start here.
Well, you held up the book. It seemed like a great intro.
I know. Yeah, this book is my career soldier series. Are all standalones within the same world. And this particular one has been brewing for a while. And it's the story of 2 people who have very exciting plans for their lives. They have very defined paths in front of them and big goals, big dreams. And something happens and it just upends all of it. And it's how they deal with it and find each other through that big event that upends it. And since the subtitle is A Secret Baby Slow Burn Military Romance, you can guess what that thing was. Right, yeah. So she's the daughter of the football coach at West Point, and he is a first classman at West Point. And it's a very complicated thing at the academy. to have this situation going on. So it's.
How much research did you do for, West Point is a world unto itself, as anybody who's familiar with the military knows.
Right. Well, both my dad and my husband were grads. So West Point, I don't remember a time ever in my life when West Point wasn't kind of my home while we were army hopping all over the world. So I did a little bit of updating things, and again I visit enough that I know, and we still have enough friends who are up there to know what's going on. Most of the research I did, interestingly, was about the situation. It in all the service academies at this point, if you are a female cadet or midshipman or airman and you get pregnant, you have the option to terminate the pregnancy or to continue the pregnancy, take a year of leave, sign away your parental rights, and go back and graduate with the class behind you, or you have to leave. And if you leave after the beginning of your junior year, you owe the government the money that has for your education.
Spent on your education, yes.
Right. And technically, it's the same for the men. If they father a child, they are supposed to sign away their parental rights if they wish to remain in the service academy. And it's actually a big topic within the military community at this point, because women are graduating after having signed away their parental rights and have to go to court to get back the rights to the children who they bore. So there's a bill actually in committee right now, sponsored by both Democrats and Republicans. Actually, Ted Cruz and Dianne Feinstein are I think the people, so an unlikely couple there, to try to change this and make it so that it's not, that it's not this way. But for my purposes, for my story, it worked out very well that it was this way, because it gave him, a reason
Conflict
that he could not admit that he was the father of the baby without losing his career and his time at West Point. So
okay.
Yeah.
Caren, tell us a little bit about your story in the Valentine's anthology for Caneham Castle and the research you did, because Caneham Castle is a fictional place.
It is, and I've had the great fortune to participate in all of the Caneham Castle anthologies that we've issued so far. So I'm a little closer to it than some of the authors who are coming and going from it. But for this one, I have to say, I have a lot of notes at this point, both on the stories that I've written and on Caneham Castle itself. We have a whole story Bible that's going for this place. It's gotten to be quite complicated with 7 authors writing stories. So we have a lot to keep up with for that one. This one is, this anthology is called Love and Valentines at Caneham Castle, and did come out before Valentine's Day. My story in the anthology is called Romance Sells Records, and I have a heroine who really rolls her eyes at everything to do with Valentine's Day. She has been put off romance in general by watching her mother deal with a series of bad relationships throughout her life. So she is in Caneham to open a record store. She's opening a vinyl shop. The kids love vinyl these days. Harkening back to our youths.
Not just kids.
Hey, it's popular again. So she's opening a vinyl shop, and that's why she has rolled into town. And for all of her disdain for Valentine's Day and romance in general, she meets a guy who's working on the shop whose parents had a storybook romance. They met at Live Aid in 1988. It's a story, it's their story. It's the story they tell everyone. So he grew up with this great romance, and the two of them learning to have a relationship was a lot.
After having lost so many damn vinyl records to scratches and skips and all that, I was so delighted to have CDs in it. I view the whole return to vinyl as going, anyway, that just makes me old. Okay, Deb, your new series is about the Crystal Palace, and oh my God, talk about the beginning of the future. Could you tell us a little bit about these books and what the research that you had to do? Because I mean, I think the current version of Flush Toilets premiered there.
They did. It was the first ever public toilets. You had to pay a penny, and you got, not only did you get to use the toilet, you got a towel and a shoe shine along with it. So
that was a bargain.
But yeah, I did a lot of research, but it was, I'm a total history nerd, so I totally love that kind of deep dive. So, and the murder actually occurs in the Crystal Palace, and I have a duo, couples of sleuths who are a couple who meet in this book because they are both exhibitors in the Great Exhibition of 1851. And for those of you who don't know, it was the first World's Fair. It was the giant exhibition, pretty much a brainchild of Prince Albert. He was one of the driving forces, and his friend Henry Cole, and basically committees of scientists and marketing guys who just invited every country in the world to bring their best technology and their most fabulous art and show it off to the world. And it was a huge thing. It was like a worldwide phenomenon. It was predicted to be a huge disaster. It was months of bemoaning, oh, they built this giant glass monstrosity in the middle of Hyde Park. We're going to have riots and disease and foreigners, and it's going to be horrible. But it was not. It was fabulous. And 6 million people came to the Great Exhibition, and it was, wildly successful. Even though, in my in my book, there's a murder that happens in it, but and it actually, that exhibition funded 3 museums that are still going in London, and also multiple scholarships that are still ongoing in London, and for technology grants, kind of a thing. So I just have had a fabulous time with it. The Victorian age, is super rich with lots of great details to use in a murder mystery. So I'm having a ton of fun.
Are all of the books out now, or is there just one out? And if so, could you tell us the title?
Yes, the first one just came out last Friday. The title is A Killer in the Crystal Palace.
Okay, great.
And the second book is on pre-order right now, and it's called Death from the Druid's Grove.
Okay.
And the third book comes out in August, and it's called Murder on the Murdered Lake.
Okay.
So
and it's called the
Mirrored Lake. Mirrored Lake.
Okay, the Mirror Lake. And it's called the Crystal Palace because it was glass, right?
It was a glass house, basically a giant glass house, and it was designed by Paxton, who was the gardener for the Duke of Devonshire. It was his idea. And they were looking for something that could go up fast, that would be cheap, that they could take down and move, because they didn't want to leave it in the middle of Hyde Park. And they literally built it around the trees that were in the park, and left some of the roof open so the trees could live. And it was a great idea. So
very cool. David, you're another history fan. Is your new book about history?
It's not. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm breaking the mold. Yeah, I have a PhD in history, and of course, I've written the Thief Taker series. But no, this is a contemporary urban fantasy steeped in Celtic mythology. But my Celtic mythology treatment is a little, I've played with it a little bit. So my battle furies, the Morrigan, are also Las Vegas nightclub singers. And the sea god, Mananan Lakmir, is a parrot head. And the first book takes place in the United States. And basically the conceit of the series is there are treasures that belong to the Sidhe. And these are real things, the Stone of Fall and the Spear of Lugh and a couple of others. And they're being stolen from here. They're chalices of magic. And as long as they exist in our world, magic can exist here. And the Sidhe can protect us, basically, and keep our world safe. The Fomor are stealing them and taking them into the Underrealm. And if they get them down there, then there's no magic here, and they will overrun, the demons will overrun our world. So that's the idea behind it. And so each book revolves around a different artifact that's being chased. And the first one takes place in the States. The second one is set in Australia, where I lived for a year. And the third one is set in Ireland, which I visited for several weeks, a few summers ago when Worldcon was there. And so I did a tremendous amount of research, because you have to do that in order to, I mean, I learned so much about Celtic mythology and so much about figures from the Ulster cycle and different periods of Celtic mythology, and fell in love with it. It was so much fun. It was great research to do. But I guess the thing that I'd tell people about this series is I actually wrote the first book 12 years ago, in between projects. I hadn't yet started the Thief Taker books, and I was kind of bored. I had nothing to do, and I wrote this first book, and I put it away, and my agent looked at it, and she was like, oh, that's good. It needs some work. And then I did all this other stuff, and then I came back to it and rewrote it, and I rewrote it about 4 times. And finally, I worked on the second book, and then got stuck on that and put it away for 4 years, and then came back to it. It's like, oh, I know how to end this now. And while I was ending that, I got the idea for the third book. And so I have this trilogy that I've been working on for, as I say, 12 years, and have worked on and refigured and just polished until it shined, and finally found a home for it. So for writers who are just getting started out there, don't throw anything away, and never give up on a series that you adore, because I love these books. I loved the first one the moment I finished writing. But it wasn't ready, and it didn't yet have a home. So to see them coming out this year, and all 3 of them will be out by the end of the year, is really exciting.
What are the titles?
The Chalice War. And the first book is Stone, the second one is Cauldron, and the third one is Sword.
Okay, and are they available for pre-order?
Not yet, but they will be.
Okay.
The first book is due out in May. They're coming out from Bellbridge Books. And the first book will be out in May. I imagine they'll go up for pre-order sometime in early to mid-April.
Okay. Nancy, what about you? You know, there's so many people who are into history and who research in this group. I know from having seen your stuff or having heard you. So what is the book that you're bringing out just about now, and what was the research that went into it?
Well, the book is Warrior Mage, and it's the 5th book in my Light Mage Wars series. Overview of the series is that these are mages, mostly in southern Georgia, the area near the Okefenokee Swamp. Their prime enemies are ghouls, who are dark magic users and have talons that can suck out magic or life energy, and they can only eat fresh kills, so they have a tendency to kidnap people and mages and animals and whatever they can get to eat. And they are trying to bring demons from the void between worlds into this world. And this battle between the mages and the ghouls, with the demons appearing from time to time, is a cyclical thing that has been going on for millennia. But now we're in the present time, and I'd been waiting to write Will's book The books were originally published, the ones that are Renegade Mage, The Deadly Orb, and Embattled Mage were originally published by another company, and they've reverted to me. So they are reissues if anybody's out there listening about that. But Will is my nerd mage. He's into gaming. I love gaming. I'm terrible at anything above the level of Tetris, but I really love it. And luckily I have a nephew who works for a gaming company, and I called him and ran some things by him and he went, "Aunt Nancy, don't do that." So, he helped me a lot, but that was very quick. Will has a PhD in history, a second degree black belt, expertise in ancient weapons. He loves comic books, video games, online games, anything like that. And so I gave his heroine, Tawdra, an enjoyment of gaming too, to give them some common ground outside archaeology. And Tawdra is conducting an archaeological excavation on an island in the Okefenokee Swamp. This is it's probably going to be the only book in the series where a fair bit of the action occurs in the swamp because they're on the excavation site. And they start turning up bronze weapons. And the problem with that is North America didn't have a Bronze Age. So the foundation that's underwriting the project is going, "Oh, no, you don't. And so they call in the foundation that's run by the hero's Will's parents, who specialize in antiquities fraud. And so Will is sent to find out what in the Blue Blazes is going on in this island in the Okefenokee Swamp. And it was actually inspired by a trip that we took through the swamp as I started to write this series. And anybody who knows me knows that I am not nature woman. I like my surroundings climate controlled and my wildlife safely distant. And in the Okefenokee, you don't really get either one of those. The wildlife kind of goes where they want to go. Luckily, if you're in a boat, you can go somewhere else, which works out pretty well. But we visited this place called Billy's Island that has an American Indian burial mound on it. And there are quite a number of those throughout the Okefenokee, many of them inaccessible. So the permit for the archaeologists is, you can dig around in here, you can find what you find, but don't you touch that mound. So that later becomes a factor in the story. So it's kind of a co-workers to lovers proximity story. And so Will is Mr. Love the One You With. He's into serial monogamy. He doesn't do serious. He doesn't date women who do serious. He's not for that. Tawdra is as serious as they come, and naturally, because opposites. But she also has a problem in that she has a dark energy hitchhiker entity. And so for a long time, Will is thinking, is this the reason this project is having trouble? Is she a pawn of this? Is she a victim? Is she a willing co-conspirator? What's going on here? So they have to resolve that through the book. And it's got a lot of action in it because I like that. And luckily, I found an archaeologist who would talk to me and connected me with an archaeologist who had actually done excavations in the Okefenokee, because it's tricky because the water level is so high. And the water level as you dig down into the ground is the same as the water level over here. So you can only dig down so far before you have to start doing drainage. And a lot of the ground in the Okefenokee is peat, which poses its own challenges. So as Will and Tawdra grow closer, Will's friends are noticing this and they're saying things about it. And Will's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. We're working together. I mean, get off my back. Go away." And so, of course, as in the time-honored tradition of romance novels, this comes back to bite him toward the end. And so that's basically the book and a short look at the series.
Great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Blake, what about you? What's the title of the book, and, a little bit about it, and what kind of, it's a contemporary, it's a sweet contemporary, but a lot of people don't understand that contemporaries require world building too. So what kind of research did you do for it?
Well, so this is a very interesting series. It's very different than anything else I've written before, in that I grew up in Tennessee where it's set, and it is, although it's not really my story, it is a lot of small stories that kind of come from my experience. So whereas everything else I have ever written has required hours and hours and hours of research, this one didn't as much. Of course, anytime you write, you're going to be digging deep into trying to find out things about people's lives that you don't know.
So what's the book about?
Homework. So 2 years. So we'll start. Let me go back a little bit. I think I'm the only one here writing romance. So this is all of the stories that I write in this series are gay romances, two men falling in love. 2 years ago, give or take, Hallmark came out with an announcement that they are going to start making movies with gay characters. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. So that's where the series came to mind. And therefore, that's why it's very sweet. High drama, very sweet. So every book in the series is about either coming home or discovering home. It is about a world. When I grew up in the 1970s and 80s, Tennessee was not a very welcoming place for people who are gay. And I know that firsthand. I moved when I was 18, and I wanted to write something that showed kind of the changes that have taken place in Tennessee over the years. It's a very, very different place. It's very accepting, depending on where you are. I set this novel outside of Nashville so that it does have a big city contemporary feel. However, Crawford City is not. I wanted it to be small town. I wanted it to be reflective of the town that I grew up in. So the first novel is A Long Way Home. It came out a week ago. And it is about two doctors. One was a foster kid who grew up in a small town on the west side of Tennessee. He grew up, ended up getting to go to Harvard Medical School. He met a very wealthy guy who was also in medical school. They hit it off, and they end up both back in Tennessee and then end up in Crawford City. And so that's the beginning of the series. A very convoluted way to get to Crawford City, but it does work out. The best way to describe the series is Still Magnolias. Do you remember from the 80s?
Yes.
You know, everyone, if you like high drama, lots of tears, lots of laughter. Still Magnolias meets Tales of the City, if you remember that old show that came out in the 70s. I think they remade it recently.
Mopan,
yes.
His first name, I can't remember his first name. It began with A, but
I
Mopan
always mispronounce it, so I try not to say it in public. Especially not on a panel. Thank you. but you know, there's just a lot of drama because this was written for Hallmark. There is no sex scenes. There, you know, everything is off page. It's very sweet. So the drama is intensely high. People die in the first novel. I had my very first review on this book said, I need therapy after reading this book. And I felt really good about that.
That is so evil. Okay. What was the specific spark? I mean, was it the fact that Hallmark has decided finally to do, to have LGBTQIA stories, or was there an incident that you looked and said, wait a minute, that's a book?
You know, I don't really have an answer for that. So there was a movie that came out in 2000 called Big Eden, and it's just high sweet. It's a gay romance that came out, and there's no explicit scenes. It's the opposite of what everything else that was coming out at the time. But when you got done watching the movie, you felt really good about the couple. You felt good about the community, and it was kind of a utopic idea of what it would be like to come out in a rural part of the world. And I've always wanted to create something similar to that. So when Hallmark made their announcement, which by the way, Hallmark had a publishing company. If you don't know, that publishing company just recently went away. I lived in Kansas City for years, so I was acquainted with the woman who was running that publishing company. And I'm just getting the books out when they announced that they're not going to do that anymore. So I'm like, that I have all these books. And at the moment I have 8 books that are going to be published, possibly 2 more. So it's a very long series. So that is being self-published instead of formally.
Okay.
But, to answer your question, I really think it came down to wanting to write something to show the world that, love is love. It's a beautiful thing. It's not always just about sex or sexuality. Often it's about community. It's about being with the people who love you and that you love, and all the drama that's wrapped around being with family and friends, and a small gossipy town where everyone is in your business all the time. Again, I've always lived in small towns, and gossip is right. So you just really kind of have to come to terms with that if you're going to live in a small town. So it's just an opportunity to express that from my perspective, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Tawdra, what was the moment that said this is a book for you, for your current release? What was that spark that did it for you?
This one has been on my heart for so long, because the 3 books that came before it we're kind of setting it up, and the characters are mentioned in passing. And as I wrote that last book, I thought, oh, this is what's going to happen. Okay. And that was actually about 3 years ago. And I've lived with these characters for a long time. They weren't ready. They weren't ready yet. We really had to go through what I needed to get to know them a little bit better, and they were not quick to share themselves with me. The Willow, who is the female lead, was a lot easier than Dean, who is the football player male lead. And just realizing what clicked for me was when I realized that his whole motivation in life up to this point had been getting out of the small town that he grew up in, which was a small town in Pennsylvania, very depressed. He had seen everybody around him lead the same life, and he was bound and determined not to do that. And West Point was the ticket out for him, and he was not going to do anything to mess that up. I did draw a little bit. My husband was a very toe-the-line cadet and had several roommates who would toe the line. So having Dean be kind of that way, the one who was always going to do the right thing, even when other people around him were not, was important. So I just, it finally started to click about a third of the way through it, and I said, okay, I know these people. Okay, we're good. So
cool. Nancy, what was the spark that said this particular story was a book? Was it that trip to the Okefenokee Swamp? Was it seeing the mound in the middle of the swamp and, oh, you can't use it? Or was it the characters? What was the spark?
It was kind of a combination of them. Audra was born when we took a steam train trip through the North Carolina mountains. And it was an open train. It wasn't a fancy thing where they serve you dinner or anything, but you can see the scenery, and it's a steam train. And our son was really into any form of transportation. So, of course, we took the steam train. And so as we came down the track, we had to wait to go into, or really through, the next station, because there was a train in the station. And the field to the left of the train had recently been harvested. You could tell everything was cut way down. So it was really obvious that there was a very tall mound in the field. And the conductor, whoever does the announcements, came over the PA and told everyone that that had been built by the Cherokee. And I'm from North Carolina. I've heard about Cherokee, North Carolina, and the American Indians there, off and on my whole life. But it was background to my life. It wasn't really a central thing for me because I don't have that ancestry and I don't live near there. But what really got me was the people in the seat behind me. And after the conductor made this announcement, the man said, yeah, and then we stole their land and drove them away. And the woman sitting next to him said, oh, I'm sure we compensated them. And it was all I could do not to turn around and say, excuse me, have you heard of the Trail of Tears? And, my undergraduate degree is in history. And the Trail of Tears was a paragraph in the textbook for the survey book. when I got to law school, we read the case where the Supreme Court told Andrew Jackson, you can't do that. And Andrew Jackson's response was basically, well, John Marshall's made his decision. Let's see him enforce it. And so I've always thought that was appalling. And well, always since I learned exactly what was involved in it. And so I thought, obviously this woman doesn't know that. And there are a lot of other people who don't know that. But the book is not about the Trail of Tears, because that is not my story to tell. And I don't feel that I could do it justice as that story needs to be told. So, but Audra was born out of that experience. Audra is part Cherokee. I was able to confer with some people who have friends who are Cherokee and who are themselves American Indians, because terms of reference change over time. I first wrote this book a year ago. A woman who's a member of a tribe in Canada pointed out something called the jealous Indian maiden stereotype that, she said, be very careful not to make your antagonist a Native American woman. And so, because she didn't like the hero. So it was kind of a combination of that train ride. And I thought, I'm going to do a character who's part Cherokee. And the Trail of Tears is part of her history, even though the book is not going to be about that, because I just felt very strongly that was not a story I should be writing. And then I'd been looking for a book for Will, and then we went to the swamp and we saw this mound and this island, and you can't get there without a boat or a helicopter. That's it. It's very, very remote. And so it was kind of a combination of all those things that came together and kind of spun out this book.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. David, somehow I don't see you and Celtic mythology in the same room. What was the spark that made you decide that, yes, we're going to have the Sidhe protecting humanity through these receptacles of magical power from the old ones who they called Formarians, but who were really something out of Lovecraft?
Okay, so I'm going to turn around and say, why don't you see me writing Celtic mythology?
I think of you in Thief Taker. I think of you in epic fantasy. I think of you in that very intense, very grounded in current urban legendary series that you did, that urban fantasy, which of course, now that I need to know the title of it, I'm blanking completely. Right. So I'm just going, where did you get, what suddenly said, okay, it's time for me to do my Celtic story?
So what I said before really was the case. We were shopping Thief Taker. And at first, no one was nibbling. We ended up selling it to Tor, who had published my earlier epic fantasies. But at first, they were skeptical of having me shift in this way to a different sort of storyline. And so we were waiting on that. And the previous epic fantasy series I'd written, the Blood of the Southland series, hadn't done very well. And frankly, I was at a point in my career where I was thinking, I wonder if I'm done. I wonder if, nobody's going to pick up Thief Taker. And if I've had a nice run. I have 11 books out. I now have 30 out. But at the time, I was like, I have 11 books out. That's a pretty good run. Maybe I'm finished. And my immediate reaction was, well, I'm not finished because I still have stories to tell. And in the process of thinking that, of kind of reassuring myself that I had more stories to write, I had this idea come to me. And it manifested itself in a pair of characters and a scene that's central to the early part of the first book in the series. And I just started writing. And I thought, I'm not going to worry about New York. I'm not going to worry about my agent. I'm not going to worry about writing to an editor. I'm not even going to worry about what's going to come after this story. I'm not going to worry about crafting a trilogy and figuring. I'm just going to write. And it was so freeing. It was so much fun. It was really one of the first times in my career that I'd really done this, giving no thought at all to marketing, giving no thought at all to what was going to be the next part of the story. I was just writing for the sheer joy of it. And I realized very quickly that I wanted to delve. I'd spent some time reading Greek and Iberian mythology. Who knew that was a thing? But it was, and I spent some time reading that when I was working on developing one of the previous epic fantasy series. And I thought, well, I'm going to go back and read some Celtic mythology because I really haven't done that. And I fell in love with it. I just fell in love with it. And so I started putting in those elements. And I spend most of my time laughing and cutting up and being silly. And my books thus far had been fairly serious. This was the first humorous book I wrote. This book has plenty of action and plenty of serious stuff, and bad things happen to good people. But there's also a lot of humor in it, a lot of snark. And, you know, I didn't know where the book was going. I didn't know whether it was going to be any good. It took about 2/3 of the way into the book, about 60,000 words, before I realized, yeah, there really is a story here. And there's really something here that I'm going to be able to sell. And at some point, I'm going to have to think about what is going to come next. But I was writing for me. And it was joyous. And frankly, the second half of my career has been more fun for me because I have done a lot more of writing for me than I used to, and I enjoy that.
Yeah, well, I'll be curious about it because you are very snarky in real life, and it's fun. And I've been on panels with you and watched you in panels, and I'd never quite found that in your fiction before. So I'll be curious about this one.
Yeah, there's a lot of humor in these books, a lot of, and most of it comes through the Morrigan, the Battle Furies, because these are beings who thrive on strife, who are constantly trying to create warfare and of course the three of them, because of that, in my book, they don't get along, and so they are throwing insults at each other all the time, and it was really fun to write.
Cool. Great. Okay, Caren. Okay, what was it that told you that you had a story about a woman who's opening a vinyl shop? What told you that this was your story for Valentine's at Canham Castle?
Well, I had to have a reason for her to move from London out to this small town that's near the Welsh border. And so that was what I came across. I think I had read an article in the past few months that was addressing the fact that there were so many vinyl shops opening and that it had been such a trend for the last couple of years. So I thought, okay, well, we can use that. So I created, a disgustingly rich owner for this series of shops who has nothing better to spend his money on than opening what will probably lose him a lot of money. So so that is where that came from. But it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with it.
Looking for the British equivalent of a tax write-off, huh?
There you go.
All right. Deb, what said to you, oh, mystery, Crystal Palace? What set the spark off for that one?
So the very first part of this book that came to me, and is the male character, Mr. Niall Keir, and he's kind of been floating around in the back of my head for a few years. He's got a lot of secrets, and I've known what his secrets are for a while. And I always thought, I've written, 30 some Regency romances, and I always thought I would make him a hero. But his story is really big, and I just didn't want to, I don't know. I've always wanted to write a mystery. I love mysteries. And I thought, well, I'm going to give him a mystery. And so it really was the two main characters, the two sleuths, that came to me first. Not only is he, a guy with a lot of secrets, but he's a forge artist. So he's like a big, burly, guy who, pounds iron and makes it into something beautiful, the heroine is a Victorian woman who is not really a typical Victorian woman. She's very right-brained, but she's also very creative. So she creates automatons. And so that's what she's showing, automatons and case clocks in the Great Exhibition, and he's showing his forge art. And I've always been fascinated with the Great Exhibition, so I went, okay, I'm going to find out about this, and it's all clicked. So, and I'm having a huge amount of fun with it. So,
Great. Well, we're sort of closing in on the end of the hour, but there's one thing that I want to ask all of you before we give you a chance to repeat your titles again and tell us where folks can find you on the web. What I want to know, and I'm going to start with you, Deb, is what do you want readers to take away from this book?
You know, it's the same for me with every book. I want somebody to close the last page and go, okay. I want that feeling. I want them to feel good. I want them to feel like, oh my gosh, that was a ride I really enjoyed. You know, I want every book to be like that. And in this one, I really want them to feel like, because it's my first mystery, I want them to feel like, oh my gosh, that really was a fun ride. Could I have figured that out? And I can't wait for the next one. Like, what are they going to do next? So
that's great. Okay, Blake, what is it that you want people to take away from this book? You know, and as Deb said, from the series, what is it?
So the main thing I want people to take away is that, you know, well, first of all, I think Dolly Parton said in Still Magnolia, sorry, going to go back there. Her favorite emotions are in tears and crying and laughter. I want people to laugh, and I want people to cry, and I want people to feel all the emotions as they're going through the books. I'm very Southern in that way. But also, like Deb said, when someone closes my book, I want them to feel like they've just completed a journey. I want them to have fallen in love with the character, or I want them to absolutely hate a character. I mean, I don't really care. I just want a lot of emotions. So, okay. Yeah.
Great. Tawdra, what do you want folks to take away from the book?
I want people to feel as though they've just spent a lot of time with people who they know, who they, by the end of these people, and that after they finish, they think every now and again, I wonder what Willow and Dean are doing. I wonder what, you know, I wonder what's going on with them right now. And I want them to feel like they've experienced something with people who they have gotten to know and like.
Okay, great. Nancy, what do you want folks to take away from the book?
Well, I would echo the feeling of being really satisfied and going just kind of, but I also would like them to be a little bit aware that not everything in our history is great, and that it's complicated as to who owns this land. The book's not about that, like I said, but it is a teeny part of it and part of the inspiration for it. And I'd like them to say, that was a good fight scene. So
you want a good fight scene, always, yes. Okay, Caren, what about you? What do you want folks to take away from the novella?
Well, I think really for the whole, for all of the Kingdom Castle anthologies, I think there's something for everyone. They are all love stories, but they're very different love stories. You were talking about male-male romances. We have male-male romances in our anthologies. And so there really is something for everyone. And I hope that readers find a love story that touches their hearts.
Okay, great. David, what do you want folks to take away from the first book? It's Chalice or Stone, the first book?
The first one is called, they're all called the Chalice War.
Okay.
And then the first one is Stone.
Okay. So no wonder I was confused, because I have no brain. But what do you want folks to take away from Stone and from the Chalice Wars?
You know, it's pretty much the same as people take away what I hope people take away from all my stories. I had a conversation with an editor once, and I realized every story I write is about family. The family we are born with, the families we create. And this story is very much about family and about creating family out of, for many of my characters, broken lives, and finding their new heart's home with the people around them. And so that's the theme that I hope people internalize, even if they're not even fully aware that they're internalizing it.
Okay, cool. So again, we're talking the Chalice Wars, and could you give me the individual titles again, and where it's available, will be available, and where folks can find you on the web?
Right. So it's the Chalice War. First book is Stone. Second book is Cauldron. Third book is Sword. And they will all be out. I imagine they'll be out May, maybe July, September, something like that. The three of them. They're coming from Bellbridge Books, and you can find more information about them when I finally get the page up at my website, which is davidbco.com.
Great. Okay, Blake, name of the book, where it's where they can find it, and where they can find you.
So the Coming Home series, the first one came out February 11th, I believe, or maybe 13th. I can't remember. Sorry. That is A Long Way Home. The second one is Family Home. It comes out March 24th. The third one is Discovering Home. It's coming out in April, and then there'll be another one that comes out in May. The titles completely slipped my mind. Something Home. But those will be coming out 1 month at a time. We'll take June or July off, and then we'll jump right back in again to publish them for the rest of the year. So, but
and where will
you can get them on Amazon?
Okay.
Amazon. I pulled all my books back over to Amazon, and they're now on KU. So
okay, and
where
can folks find you on the web?
I am under BlakeAllwood.com. Very easy. If you want to look at my fantasy books, those are AdamJRidley.com.
Okay. Tawdra, the book, where folks can find it, where they can find you.
The book is The First Classman, and it is available wide everywhere, including on my website, in paperback, audiobook, and ebook. The rest of the series, however, is not available any place except Kickstarter, which the Kickstarter is launching tomorrow for the rest of the Career Soldier books, and all new covers, additional content, audiobook, all kinds of fun new stuff. And they can find me on my website, TawdraKandle.com. Very easy. If you just put in my first name, you will find many pages of me. There aren't any other Tawdras.
Hey, regarding the Kickstarter and the date, that would be starting February the 23rd.
Sorry, that would be starting February the 22nd. Yes. So, and it 22nd. will be running through the beginning of March. So.
Okay, great. All right. Deb, book title, where folks can find it, where they can find you.
A Killer in the Crystal Palace is out now. Death from the Druid's Grove comes out in May. Murder on the Mirrored Lake comes out in August, and you can find all the information and lots of historical tidbits and extras on debmarlowe.com.
Okay, great. Caren?
The book is Love and Valentines at Caneham Castle. All of the Caneham Castle books are available at every ebook retailer. And more information on me can be found at CarenCrane.com, and that is Caren with a C.
Okay, great. And Nancy, what title of the book, where folks can find it, and when, if that's relevant, and where folks can find you on the web.
The book is Warrior Mage. It's available now. It came out February 15th. It's available in online retailers only at this point, and in ebook. There will be a print edition later in the spring. You can find information about me at nancynorthcott.com, and the only form of social media I'm really active on with any consistency is Twitter, where I'm at Nancy Northcott.
Great. All right. Thank you all. The books all sound fascinating. Can't wait to read them. And thank you for joining us here at ConTinual, the convention that never ends. We're so glad to have you.